Welcome to the House of Mourning. Hey there, I'm your host, Joëlle Willard, and this podcast is a space where my guests and I explore the raw, unfiltered truths and inner knowings we tap into in grief and in life after loss and trauma. We reject societal norms that condition us into bypassing and fast-forwarding through the work of healing. My personal desire to normalize grief is the result of my own healing journey, having lost my father at the age of 33, and most recently the death of my second son late term in pregnancy. For those of you that find yourself in grief, recalibrating after loss, or healing from trauma, I honor you. Perhaps you are here because you are navigating, supporting a loved one who is grieving, or on a healing journey. If so, way to show up for yourself and them. Wherever you are on the journey, all of you is welcome here. Hey, it has been a minute, people. Wow. I am so glad to be back. I want to come on here and open things up again. I have been absolutely at my bandwidth. I kind of fell off a postpartum cliff there with the birth of my baby after loss. And yeah, it's been a minute, friends. So I'm going to be changing a little bit about how I do the House of Mourning. And I'm going to be mixing up my interviews and like guests coming onto the podcast with some more time with me. And so I'm going to have topics that I'm going to be covering. I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about concepts, about experiences, about things that I'm noticing within the grief and loss and recalibrating after trauma space. Yeah, we're going to kind of just dig into things a little bit more. I am still on Treaty 6 territory here in Mohkinsis, colonially known as Calgary, Alberta, Canada, on Turtle Island. And more than ever, I am committed to focusing on the embodied healing and wisdom that comes from trauma, life-shaking, soul-shaking loss. And I'm still me. I'm still here. I've been doing my master's. When I launched this podcast initially, I had just started my master's, and then coincidentally in the first month of my master's, I found out I was pregnant with my third child. And so that was a trip. And then I got pretty deep into, the launch of everything. And January of 2024, I fell off a cliff. And what I mean by that is just emotionally, I was starting to have a really difficult time pregnant after loss because I started walking through the milestones of basically like the same parallel universe time frame with Julian, my second child, who I lost when we first got the scans, like hearing about his health concerns and the time that there was a bunch of testing that we did, and then around when that we lost him. And so living through those loss milestones of that pregnancy while now being pregnant in a subsequent pregnancy after loss, there were just so many things that were really, 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 really hard. And so I ended up, against my heart's desire, just having to shelf the podcast for mental health reasons, for bandwidth reasons, and then birthing him, being postpartum, and being in my master's program in a world where I was really, really struggling with what's going on politically, who was elected in November of 2024, and all that good stuff. So, or not so good stuff. So it's been a while, but I have so many more things that I've been researching, that I've been learning, living through, growing through, and a lot more clarity on the things that I want to bring forth. And so it is, February here, 2026, and January felt like about a year in the span of a month. If you think of more of like a spiritual way of looking at things, which I do, not everybody does, there's oftentimes this metaphor of how life is like a spiral. And if you look at, sacred geometry or things of that nature. Symbolism, the spiral is a very sacred and ancient symbol. And there's a lot of meaning to it. What's confusing about a spiral is sometimes we're in the downward part of a spiral and it can sometimes feel like we're going backwards. And what is next in the spiral is going upwards. And so I personally feel like that's what we're in right now. And yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough out here, at least for myself. And I know a lot of folks struggling, right, with the world that we're living in right now. I just want to thank everybody who's back with me, who's like happy to see that the podcast is continuing. And yeah, I just like haven't really felt like I wanted to necessarily do a PSA about it. I just have been doing my best behind the scenes and yeah, really just learning and working through the craziness of adapting to 2 living children and all while grieving many, many things, but especially the loss of my baby Julian in 2022, which coming up will be the 4th anniversary of his death. Just a couple days ago, I experienced the 7th anniversary or death versary, as I call them, of my father's passing, January 2018. You know, grief is still grieving. The body is still remembering, even when my brain forgets. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. I am in my 2nd month now of my practicum. I couldn't be more grateful. I believe I am at the most incredible practicum site in all of Canada. That's my personal belief. Might be a little biased. I'm working with Ally Therapy as one of their therapists. Check us out. It has an incredible model around therapy being accessible and that therapy shouldn't be a privilege. It shouldn't be a luxury. It should be a right, especially in this post-pandemic pandemic, which is a mental health pandemic after the pandemic. More than ever, there should be more spaces where accessible therapy is available. And so this site, Ally Therapy, is online and they serve BC, Alberta, and Ontario folks. And every session with all of the intern therapists like myself is available on a sliding scale. And so starting as low as $45 Canadian a session up until I think 105. And so kind of wherever your financial bandwidth allows for or insurance or whatnot, yeah, you just pop that on the scale. We offer your first session free, and that would be what we call like the intake session for those of you who have not yet been in therapy. And yeah, just know about it. It's a really good resource for Canadians only, unfortunately. They did slash might still have US operations, but right now I think they're choosing to focus on scaling in Canada as they have been at a tremendous rate. So yeah, so that's kind of a little bit about that. And I'm still at Joëlle Speaks on Instagram. Yeah, really, really excited to kind of get back going and to do things differently and to continue the House of Mourning. I have the next year till I'm done my master's in counseling psychology at Sophia University. The university that I'm doing my master's in counseling psychology at is in Southern California. It's an online program, but it's an organization, or I should say institution, that specializes specifically in transpersonal psychology. And transpersonal psychology, for those of you who know, for those of you who don't, which is probably the majority of folks, most people don't really know what transpersonal psychology is, but it's essentially what like science is catching up with now. And so one way to say is like spiritual psychology. I don't quite feel like that encompasses or encapsulates what it is, but it's essentially like East meets West type thinking. And it's also, for example, if we look at, right now in mental health, we have, positive psychology, we have mindfulness based psychology, we have the science catching up around polyvagal theory, nervous system healing, trauma healing modalities, where we're like looking at brain science, uh, bilateral stimulation. We're looking at meditation, the impacts of meditation, of walking in nature, of eco-psychology. It's just like very, very, very not new things. Science is catching up with all of that. Whereas like traditional psychology would have poo-pooed on most of that. Traditional psychology is more so diagnoses and what's the problem and pathology as in like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like looking for what's wrong in people. This is very old type thinking. And then medication. Okay. Psychopharmacology. So sounds kind of like the traditional, all created by predominantly, I would say, 99.9% of white men. And so, everything's based on like the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which again is just like a bunch of white men. And I'm not saying that that's not valid, but it misses so much of the picture. And so transpersonal psychology is about looking at holistic. What is the person's cultural background? What is the person's spiritual background? Even if they don't believe those things themselves, but like what is further the zooming out whole picture of the person that we're working with. And then it includes the soul. So it includes all that can't necessarily be seen to the naked eye, but that we know that there's more going on. Even scientifically, when we watch atoms, right? Atoms, for example, in quantum physics, okay? In metaphysics and quantum physics and such. And so it addresses at the foundation that we are a soul having a human experience. And so that is invalidated by traditional psychology. Without going into it more, because I could probably do like 20 episodes on that. I won't, but that is what I'm based in, with, of course, my background of a decade of working for a personal development company that trained people in Carl Jung's, basically like Jungian type psychology. Personal development is a whole other category that I also want to talk about. And kind of like my perspective now on it, looking backwards, and that'll be something to come as well. I would love to hear from you around what are different topics, buckets, content areas that you would like me to speak about, you would like me to zoom in about, you would like me to interview somebody about. Maybe someone who is an expert, who is a psychologist, who is an educator, or someone who has a very profound story, right, of wisdom that has emerged after loss, grief, or trauma. And so, email me, DM me on Instagram, and I'd love to look into them and see if they would come on the show. Okay, so that was a little update. We are back, people, and I'm going to do these podcasts when I can. Subscribe on wherever you follow your podcast. Maybe it's YouTube, maybe you're a Spotify head, which I don't even really want to get into talking about right now, but hey, if you're a Spotify head, great. That's where you can see the video, YouTube as well, or Apple, right? Wherever you are, I would love it if you could press subscribe and then you get notified when I do drop new content. Okay. So bye for now. It's been a hot minute. Technically, my goodness, because it's the beginning of February. So yeah, it would have been 2 years in between. And so, yeah, we will say bye for now, everybody. It means so much to me for us to be together in this way, in a world of millions and billions of other places you could be. Bye for now.